The position of three ships A, B and C are such that the bearing of B from A is 45 degree and ship C is to the east of A. If the bearing of C from B is 180 degree and the distance of AB is 10 kilometers, then what is the bearing of A from C? Also find the distance between ship A and ship C. Okay, so firstly, let's take a point, we will call that A, and then we are going to extend the north line of that point. And now we can measure by using a compass or a protractor an angle of 45 degrees. And if you divide 90 by 2, that will be what? 45 degrees. So you can just draw a 90-degree angle. Just go down the middle. So that will be exactly 45 degrees. So after drawing 45 degree, we know that the distance of A and B will be 10 kilometers. So the line will be extended until 10 centimeters because kilometers cannot be drawn into a scale. So we are going to just extend that until 10 centimeter. And after that, we will then choose a point. We will say that that point is B, and we are going to extend the north line as well as the south line. So after drawing 45 degree, we know that the distance of A and B will be 10 kilometers. So the line will be extended until 10 centimeters because kilometers cannot be drawn into a scale. So we are going to just extend that until 10 centimeter. And after that, we will then choose a point. We will say that that point is B, and we are going to extend the north line as well as the south line. Why? Because we know that the point C, it is at the east of point A. So we are also going to extend the east line of A and extend the south line of B. So you will notice that they both meet at a common point, and that common point we will name that as C. So if you look closely, we can notice that this is now forming a right angle triangle. So if the bearing of A is 45 degree, then the alternate angle, this bearing, will also be 45 degree. So now you can use trigonometry to find out the distance. For example, I have triangle A, B and C, and I need to find the distance of AC. We know that by using cos theta, which is equal to our base over hypotenuse, we can easily find the value of our base. How? Firstly, we will write cos of 45 because that will be our corresponding angle, and that will be equal to, let's say, b over and the value of our hypotenuse, which is 10. So you can easily cross multiply and find the value of AC. For example, if we want to find the value of BC, which is our perpendicular, then we can use the formula of sine theta. So we can write sine of 45 is equal to the perpendicular, which is P, divided by the value of H, which is 10. Okay, so now what if I want to find the bearing of C? So first you will notice that a straight line has been formed, and the first quadrant, we know that the angle in the first quadrant, that is 90 degrees. In the second quadrant, that is also 90 degrees. So though these both make up 180 degrees. After that, we have another quadrant which is 90 degrees too. So 180 will be added with 90 degrees. So that makes up 270 degrees. Now let's move on. Okay, so in question number 5, Babar Azam walked from point P to point Q at a bearing of 50 degree for 3 kilometers. Then he walked from point Q to point R at a bearing of 140 degree. We need to find the distance of QR, and if the distance between P and R is given as 5, we need to find the bearing of R from P. So firstly, we drew a point. Let's say that point is P, and we extended its north line. You do not need to extend its south line. Okay. After that, we know that on a perpendicular, the angle is always 90 degree, but we will measure an angle of 50 degree from our protractor. After measuring that, we know that the distance from P to Q is 3 kilometers. So from P to Q, we will draw a line which is of 3 centimeters or whatever you like. And then we will choose a point. Let's say that point is Q. We will also extend the north line and the south line of that point if you want to do so. So that is our point Q. So now we know that this is 50 degree. If we subtract 90 with 50, we will get the other angle which is inside, and that is 53 degree. So 53 degree and 50 degree, they both make up 103 degree, and that means that is the bearing of P. But for now, if you look at point Q, we will also find the bearing of Q. And if you look here, we have an angle of 90 degrees on Q point, and the outside, that is not 180 degree because that is not a straight line. So 180 degree has been subtracted from 40 degrees, because here we have 90 degrees, so 180 minus 40 is 140, so that is why the bearing of Q is 140 degree. Okay, after that, after drawing a bearing of 140, we extended our line of Q until 4 kilometers or 4 centimeters, and then our point of R was met. So at the point of R, we extended its north line also, and then we know that the distance of P to R is 5 kilometers. If the distance isn't given anywhere, you can use the Pythagoras theorem to find the distance. Okay, now what do we need to do? We need to find the value of theta. So what will be the value of theta? We can use the formula of tangent theta. If you look closely, we are given the perpendicular, which is 4, and the base, which is 5. And let's assume that we need to find the value of P to Q. In order to do that, we can just say tangent theta is equal to 4 by 5. Now tangent theta will be 1.33, and in order to find the value of theta, we will just take the arctan or inverse of 1.33. So that gives us 33 degrees. So that will be our inclination. Okay. Moving on to question number 6. Rayan spots a snake directly north from his location. Sarim is 25 meters east of Rayan and spots the same snake. If the bearing of Sarim from snake is 122 degrees, how far is Rayan from the snake? Okay, so firstly, we have a point. Let's say that that point is R, which means Rayan, and we drew a north line for that point. Okay, so on a perpendicular, the degree will always be 90 degree. And we know that Sarim, who's Rayan's friend, he is on the east of Rayan. So we went to east of Rayan and extended a line, and until 25 meters, we then took a point which is S and drew a north line of that point. And we also know that Rayan is directly, he can face the snake which is at north, but even Sarim, even if he is at east, he can still view the snake which is at north. So that is why we drew the line from Sarim to the snake. Okay, now what do we need to do? We know that the bearing of the snake is 122 degrees, and the rest, what will it be? We know that in a straight line we have 180 degree. So if 180 degree is subtracted with 122 degree, that leaves us with 58 degree. And because of this 58 degree, the alternate angle, which is the bearing of Sarim, that will also be 58 degrees. Moving on to the next question. Bilal traveled 12 kilometers on his bike to reach the school at a bearing of 60 degree from his home. Then he went to the football ground from school at a bearing of 150 degree. If the football ground is at a distance of 5 kilometers from school, then find the distance he has to cover to reach home from his football ground. Okay, so first let's take this point, which is Bilal's home or Bilal, and then we extended a north line of that point. And we are going to draw the bearing, which is 60 degree. So if the angle in a perpendicular, that is 90 degree, 90 will be subtracted with 60, and this angle will be 40 degree. Okay, we know that after drawing the bearing of Bilal's house, which is 60 degree, we need to extend our line until 12 centimeter, because that will be the distance from Bilal's house to the school. And after extending that line, we will again then draw a point and then mark its north line and south line, and then we will denote that point with S, that stands for school. Okay, now we are going to take the bearing of this point, which is Bilal school. So that will be 150 degree, and after taking a bearing of 150 degree, we know that the distance from his school and his football ground is 5 kilometers. So we can extend the line until here, and then we will also extend the line of the house of Bilal from east. So you will notice that they both meet at a certain common point. So that common point will be known as the football ground. Okay, so we know that the distance from Bilal's house to the school is 12 kilometers. Bilal's school to football ground is 5 kilometers. So in order to find the value of the base, how are we going to do so? Firstly, if you look here, we know that this total angle, that is 90 degree. So if that is 90, if you look here, this is 60 degrees. So because of alternate angle, that will also be 60 degree. And if you look here, this is 30 degree. Why? Because 90 has been subtracted from 60, so that results in 30 degree. Here this will be our 30 degree. Now let's move on to the last question of the exercise. A car leaves the garage at a bearing of 40 degree and travels in a straight line for 13 kilometers. How many kilometers north and how many kilometers east has the car traveled from the garage? Okay, so firstly, let's take a point. We will say that that point is C, which is our car. We drew a north line of that point, and then we took our protector and we measured an angle of 40 degree. And then from that measuring of 40 degree, we then extended that line until it meets here. And then we labeled that point as G, which is our garage, and we drew a north line and south line of that point. Additionally, we also drew an east line which was extended at the right side, and that is of C point. Okay, so you will notice that the south line of the garage and the east line of the car meet at a common point. So this perpendicular makes up 90 degrees. We know that the angle here is 40 degrees. So here, if you look here, this angle, it is unknown. We can say that that angle is theta. But if you look here, this is 40 degrees, so this alternate angle will also be 40 degrees. So this angle on a straight line is 180. Let's assume that the perpendicular, which is 9.88, which is 9.88, we need to find the value of x. So we can say that by using tan of 50. Why? Because 90 was subtracted from 40, that leaves us with 50. So tan of 50 will be 9.88 over x to find the value of x. But here, let's assume that 9.88 isn't found here. So how can we find the value of y, which is our perpendicular? So we know that the sine of 50 is equal to y over 13. Okay, so this 13 is basically the measure of the hypotenuse. Okay, so y over 13 will be equal to sine of 50. That means y over 13 is equal to 0.76. Cross multiplication, our resultant is 9.88. And after utilizing the formula of tangent 50, that is equal to 9.88 over x, we can easily find the value of x, which is 8.30 kilometers. So that is how you find the distance or the measure of your car to the garage, and then you can easily find the perpendicular.